आज म तपाईलाई B.Ed सेकेन्ड इयरको रिडिङ्स फर द न्यू होराइजन भन्ने मेजर इंग्लिश सब्जेक्टको चाहिँ आज म तपाईहरुलाई चाहिँ यो लेसन 2 को चाहिँ म तपाईहरुलाई चाहिँ केही सल्भ गरेको क्वेशनहरु म तपाईलाई चाहिँ शेयर गर्ने छु। यो क्वेशनहरु चाहिँ तपाईलाई चाहिँ सोधिने खालका एक्जाममा सोधिने खालका क्वेशनहरु र त्यो टेक्स्टसँग सम्बन्धित इम्पोर्टेन्ट क्वेशनहरुको चाहिँ सल्भ गरेको क्वेशनहरु हुन्। युनिट 7 मा चाहिँ रिकन्सिलिएसन एन्ड पीस भन्ने युनिट रहेको छ र लेसन 2 मा चाहिँ यो पीस एजुकेसन भन्ने लेसन 2 मा चाहिँ रहेको छ। यहाँ यो 1 भए तापनि यो क्वेशन नम्बर ए हो। यहाँनिर ए मा रहेको छ व्हाट अप्रोचेस एन्ड assumptions are put forward for peace education. Peace education is the process of acquiring the values, the knowledge, and developing the attitudes, skills, and behaviors to live in harmony with oneself, with others, and with the natural environment. The approaches for peace education are given below. 1 नम्बरमा यो चाहिँ तपाईले लेख्न सक्नुहुन्छ। 1 नम्बरमा peace education as through strengths. This approach is supported by governments and armed forces that see the maintenance of peace being achieved by armed deterrence. The emphasis is on current and recent history, and he need to maintain one's military superiority. त्यसैगरी अर्को रहेको छ peace education as conflict mediation and resolution. This approach focuses on the analysis of conflict from the personal to the global and on ways of resolving such conflicts non-violently. Much can be achieved with this approach, but one needs to recognize the danger of reproducing inequality where an unequal balance of power exists. त्यसैगरी अर्को पोइन्ट यहाँ रहेको छ peace education as personal peace. This approach is primarily interpersonal, stressing the need for empathy and cooperation with a focus on the process of education itself and a need to transform hierarchical structures at all levels of society. त्यसैगरी अर्को point peace education as world order. The starting point of this approach is the need for a global perspective and the recognition of structural violence as a measure obstacle to peace. This can be utopian perfection unless there is a detailed analysis of the links between personal and global change. त्यसैगरी अर्को पोइन्ट रहेको छ peace education as the abolition of power relationship. This approach sees people's values as themselves the product of certain structural variables, for example, to do with economic, political, and cultural power. The emphasis is therefore on raising awareness of structural violence and identification with the struggles of all oppressed groups. I think the second approach, peace education as conflict mediation and resolution, is more important in the present context because it focuses on the analysis of conflict from the personal to global issues, resolving non-violently. त्यसैगरी यो बी नम्बरको क्वेशन यहाँ रहेको छ enlist the assumptions of peace education. The assumptions of peace education are given below. War and violent conflict are not conducive to human well-being. Neither are they the result of inevitable aspect of human nature? Each that is alternative ways of being, having and organizing can be learned. त्यसैगरी क्वेशन नम्बर सी मा रहेको छ what are the major features of peace education? The major features of peace education according to Stradling, Nocter and Baines 1984 fall into three broad categories. They are given below. Exposure to a wide variety of issues, student-centered approach, provide unbiased judgment. Exposure to a wide variety of issues. The students should be introduced to a balanced picture of a range of alternative viewpoints on any issue. Some questions such as does each lesson have to be balanced or it is balanced across the whole course that is required? Which is the most important, balanced teaching or balanced learning? Should alternative viewpoints be limited to only broad agreed ones, for example party political views on defense and disarmament, or should they include the views of pressure groups such as CND and the Peace Place Union, etc.? Would be important while teaching peace education in the classroom. B point मा यहाँ रहेको छ student centered approach. In student centered approach, the teacher should be neutral. It aims to offset the apparent built-in authority of the teacher. Such procedural neutrality is used as a tool to protect divergent viewings. It helps to avoid the possibility of the teacher using their position of authority in order to indoctrinate. The emphasis is given to help students to understand the implications of their own personal viewpoints. त्यसैगरी सी पोइन्टमा यहाँनिर रहेको छ provide unbiased judgments. There is a strategy of taking a clearly committed stance as there are some issues over which there may be a degree of agreement, for example racial abuse or sexual harassment. Further, it can be argued that it is important to challenge openly some of the negative values that underpin our society, such as the unspoken acceptance of male violence, institutional racism, or the stress on ever continuing consumerism. These strategies are not mutually exclusive. Different approaches are suitable for different occasions, and good examples of case studies are available. Education for peace is one field which is clearly attempting to grasp these issues in a creative and imaginative way. त्यसैगरी अर्को यहाँनिर क्वेशन नम्बर डी मा चाहिँ यहाँनिर रहेको छ what are the aims of peace education? The aims of peace education to develop the knowledge, attitude and skills of the students are given below. To explore concept of peace both as a state of being and as an active process, to inquire into the obstacles of peace and the causes of peace, lessons both in individuals, institutions and societies. To resolve conflicts in ways that will lead towards a less violent and a measure just world. To explore a range of different alternative features, in particular ways of building a more just and sustainable world society. त्यसैगरी अर्को यहाँनिर ई नम्बरमा तपाईहरु हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ क्वेशन नम्बर ई. What does the case of different classroom mentioned in the text imply? The cases of different classroom mentioned in the text imply that while teaching for peace and not merely about peace, a close relationship needs to exist between ends and means, content and form. If one is concerned about developing self-respect, appreciation of others, concept of justice and non-violence, she or he must also be the part of the process of learning itself. This puts the teacher in the role of facilitator rather than in authority, creating a person-centered learning climate which involves much more than just intellect. Such a climate will encourage participatory and experiential learning. It will involve democracy in action through the development of social and political skills in the classroom. यो चाहिँ क्वेशन नम्बर ए को आन्सर छ. त्यसैगरी हामी एफ नम्बरमा हेर्न सक्छौं. You are familiar with the fact that strikes called on by different political parties, their sister organizations and other agitating groups are severally affecting the children's right to get education in a free and peaceful atmosphere. Why this is happening? Is it good? What should we do to make schools as peaceful zone? Discuss in group and write a newspaper article based on the ideas emerged from the discussion. यहाँनिर तपाईहरु हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. Strikes are the product of struggle between in and out of power and authority. Two groups of people are related in any kind of strikes. When people in power try to maintain their position, authority and control, the people without power and authority want to attain it. Generally, the powerless or severless or subordinate groups use strike as a means to protest. The power struggle takes place at any levels of society. However, the strikes that are called on by different political parties, their sister organizations and other agitating groups are severely affecting every walk of life in our society. For example, the ordinary and poor people suffer the most. The traffic is geared down. The important and official works are postponed. The schools, colleges, hospitals, factories, etc. are closed. There is no supply of goods and essential commodities, etc. Moreover, we can say that strikes affect every sphere of human life. The strikes have fatal effects on schools and colleges. In other words, the way strikes are called in Nepal deprives the children's right to education in a free and peaceful atmosphere. This is happening because the so-called politicians declare schools as zone of peace, because the so-called peace when they are giving speech, but practically they are making schools and colleges as their political playgrounds. Moreover, the schools and colleges have become the political platform to train the followers of the political parties. The sister organizations of political parties are running unions, organizing political programs, using students during local and national elections. During strikes, all schools and colleges remain closed. It is not good because the courses are never completed and exams are always delayed. Every student should get a right to education. It is the duty of every state and government to secure the children's right to get education in a free and peaceful environment. The political parties, their sister organizations, and other agitating groups should not use students in their benefits. They should search other means of strikes for their power balance other than using students. यो चाहिँ क्वेशन नम्बर एपको क्वेशन एन्सर रहेको छ। त्यसैगरी हामी जी मा हेर्न सक्छौं यहाँनिर। Has our education system, especially school education, incorporated the subject related to peace? Has it promoted peace and harmony in the society? What contents do you suggest to be included in the school textbooks to make students familiar with the value of peace? Peace education has been an emerging discipline since 1950s. The developed countries have already incorporated the values and assumption of peace in their education system. In spite of political instability, insurgency, and violence, Nepal has been following the age-old traditional, theoretical, and teacher-oriented education system. There is religious and social harmony. However, we lack a peace education in our education system. Due to the lack of peace education, the ethnic and political unrest has been taken place in our country. Today, a person from the hills feels himself unsafe in Tarai and vice versa. So peace education is necessary in our education system. I would like to suggest the following content to be included in the school textbooks to make students familiar with the values of peace. To help pupils to develop lively inquiring minds, the ability to question and argue rationally. To instill respect for religious and moral values and tolerance of other races, religions, and ways of life. To help pupils to understand the world in which they live in the interdependence of individuals, groups, and nations. To introduce liberal humanitarian tradition for passing on the basic cultural heritage from generation to generation. To introduce self-development, self-reliance, and social harmony through child-centered tradition. To teach about the main job of education through utilitarian tradition. To see education through reconstruction's tradition as a potential instrument for changing society. यो चाहिँ रहेको थियो क्वेशन नम्बर जी को चाहिँ एकदम यो क्वेशनहरु चाहिँ एकदम सबै एकदम इम्पोर्टेन्ट क्वेशनहरु चाहिँ हुन् हाम्रो डेली लाइफमा चाहिँ अब यो आउने खालका क्वेशनहरु हुन्। यो क्वेशनहरु चाहिँ प्राय क्वेशनहरु सबै चाहिँ तपाईले चाहिँ सल्भ गरेकै राम्रो। तपाईले चाहिँ ए टु जेड तपाईले क्वेशनलाई चाहिँ तपाईले सल्भ गर्नुभयो भने तपाईले चाहिँ धेरै कुराहरु चाहिँ तपाईले चाहिँ सिक्न सक्नुहुन्छ। त्यसैगरी यहाँनिर अर्को रहेको छ should education foster peace and harmony in the society? How can we do that? Education should foster peace and harmony in the society. The progress of any society or community largely depends upon the people living in that community. There be many problems in our society. The problems such as racial discrimination, religious intolerance, political conflicts, hatred, prejudices, etc. are causing a great imbalance in peaceful and harmonious society. So only education can bring peace and maintain harmony in the society. The first thing we should notice is that a society is composed of many people who have different needs, attitudes, belief, etc. They may belong to different race, culture, religion, and many may speak different languages. For any society, these diversities should be maintained, and the only way is through education. Another important thing we should realize that a newly born child is asocial in the beginning. Later on, the society teaches him or to be social. The children learn the code of conduct from their home and society. For this purpose, it is necessary for all people to be educated in every society. Nepal has been a good example of unity among diversity. However, the decade-long political instability, conflict, poverty, unemployment, and many other problems have caused imbalance in our social harmony. In such situation, people from Tarai feel unsafe in the hills, and vice versa is true in the same context. Thus, all people should be educated, and education should foster peace and harmony in the society. यो चाहिँ क्वेशन नम्बर एस को एन्सर रहेको छ। त्यसैगरी अर्को यहाँनिर हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ what are the consequences of violence in the society? How can we remove violence? Violence is an evil to society. It hinders development, peace, and harmony in the society. It may involve loss of poverty, life, and happiness in the society. The progress and trade in the societies are also paralyzed, and the belief among the communities is cut off. The ordinary citizens gain nothing from the violence. Only the political leaders and many agitating groups may take the advantage of violence. Developmental activities and progress are stopped. The whole societies are diverted only to resist it. Violence has fatal consequences in the society. Its consequences can be seen in terms of loss of property, life, liberty, and happiness. The societies can be seen as shattered after the violence. The period after violence is more dreadful than during violence. People do not believe each other. The impunity paralyzes the rule of law. The societies may turn into the verge of bankrupt. The impairment in the development, education, social civilization, etc. keeps the society into the dark age. Thus, it is necessary to remove the violence from our society. For a successful termination of violence, the government should implement democratic laws to its people. The people should respect each other in the society. Only cooperation and understanding among the people can be useful to remove the violence in the society. The political parties, their sister wings, and other agitating groups must seek the non-violent way of protest. In this way, the violence can be removed from our society. यो चाहिँ रहेको थियो क्वेसन नम्बर आएको चाहिँ सल्भ गरेको क्वेसन। यो चाहिँ रहेको थियो लेसन चाहिँ 2 को। यसमा चाहिँ क्वेसनहरू धेरै नै छन्, तर यो एकदम इम्पोर्टेन्ट क्वेसनहरूको एन्सरहरू चाहिँ रहेको छन्। यो पिस एजुकेसन सम्बन्धी चाहिँ क्वेसन र त्यसको एन्सरहरू रहेको छन्। यो क्वेसन सबै क्वेसनहरू चाहिँ एकदम इम्पोर्टेन्ट छन्। मैले अघिल्लो भिडियो बनाएको अघिल्लो सल्भ गरेको क्वेसनहरू पनि यो प्रत्येक क्वेसनहरू चाहिँ एकदम इम्पोर्टेन्ट खाले हुन्छ नि। अब सल्भ गर्ने तरिकाहरू चाहिँ तपाईँको अब फरक हुन्छ हैन। सल्भ गर्ने कसैले चाहिँ छोटो सल्भ गरिदिन्छ, कसैले चाहिँ अलिक एक्सप्लेन गरेर चाहिँ सल्भ गरिदिन्छ नि त्यही क्वेसनलाई हैन। त्यही भएर तपाईँले त्यो क्वेसन चाहिँ तपाईँहरूको निम्ति चाहिँ एकदम इम्पोर्टेन्ट रहेको छ। त्यो क्वेसनलाई चाहिँ तपाईँहरूले चाहिँ बुझेर अलि अझ तपाईँले चाहिँ अलि रिसर्च गरेर चाहिँ तपाईँले चाहिँ त्यसको क्वेसन एन्सर लेख्नुभयो भने चाहिँ एकदम त्यो तपाईँले चाहिँ धेरै कुरा चाहिँ सिक्न सक्नुहुन्छ। हुन्छ, यो रहेको थियो लेसन 2 को पिस एजुकेसनको यो चाहिँ सल्भ गरेको क्वेसनहरू थिए। तपाईँले चाहिँ यसलाई चाहिँ आरामले तपाईँले चाहिँ धेरैभन्दा धेरै चाहिँ प्र्याक्टिस गर्नुहोस्, ताकि यो क्वेसनहरूको एन्सर चाहिँ तपाईँलाई चाहिँ इन्डिभिजुअली तपाईँले चाहिँ जहिले सोद्धा पनि तपाईँले चाहिँ सर र तपाईँले चाहिँ भन्न सक्ने खाले चाहिँ त्यस्तो तरिकाले चाहिँ तपाईँले चाहिँ क्वेसनहरू चाहिँ तपाईँले प्र्याक्टिस गर्नुहोस्। हुन्छ, आजलाई यति नै। आउने समयमा म तपाईँलाई चाहिँ बाँकी रहेको लेसनहरूको म तपाईँलाई सल्भ गरेको क्वेसनहरू म तपाईँलाई चाहिँ सेयर गर्ने नै छु। तबसम्म मेरो भिडियोले तपाईँले चाहिँ लाइक गरिदिनु होला। अनि त्यसपछि अहिलेसम्म पनि मेरो च्यानललाई तपाईँहरूले सब्सक्राइब गर्नुभएको छैन भने तपाईँहरूले मेरो च्यानललाई सब्सक्राइब पनि गरिदिनु होला।